Hello everyone, I'm Mr. Furlong, and today we're talking controlled experiments. Controlled experiments have been around for centuries. Even your parents carried out controlled experiments during their biology days. And controlled experiments are used to help us solve problems. Now we solve problems all the time. For instance, in the morning, you might have to decide, what am I going to wear to school that day? Or after school, you might think, do I want to watch SpongeBob or do I want to study my biology? All of these decisions that you make, though, are based on feelings. And in science, that's the last thing we want to base our decisions on. We want good data to make our decisions. And using a controlled experiment helps us to get that good data. So exactly what is a controlled experiment? Well, we can define it as a scientific investigation in which a variable is being tested. In controlled experiments, you could test for 1, 2, or 3 variables or even more. They do get very difficult to set up. In our class, we're only going to be testing for 1 variable at a time. Now, there's all types of variables in an experiment. There's, for instance, the independent variable. Now that's the variable that is being tested. That's the one that we want to find out about. The second type is a dependent variable. Now the dependent variable is the variable being measured. In fact, you could say that the dependent variable depends on the independent variable. Ooh, I like that. I'm going to keep that. And finally, the third type of variable are the control variables. So these are all the variables that have to remain the same throughout the experiment. In other words, they are going to be controlled by the experimenter. That's you. So let me give you an example. A student was doing a research project for her biology class, and she decided to see how temperature affects the development of snakes. So she obtained several snake eggs, placed them into 3 separate cages, each with a different temperature. And then she measured their length every month for a year. In this example, the independent variable, of course, is the temperature. Each cage was set up with a different temperature. The dependent variable was the growth that she measured. Every month she would measure their length and then, of course, plot that on a graph. The control variables are those variables that she had to control for, such as making sure that she had the same species of snake, that she used the same number of snake eggs, that when she put them into the cages were all the same. They were all exactly the same size, the same make and model. She wanted to make sure that she gave them exactly the same amount of food, the same amount of water. All of the things that can affect the growth of the snake had to be controlled for because she only wanted to find out how temperature affected their growth. Now in biology class, we're going to be dealing a lot with subjects in our experiments, and so in this case the subjects were the snakes. Typically in a controlled experiment there's going to be 2 groups that we set up. There's the control group, which is the one that we give all the variables to except for the one that we're finding out about. And then there's the experimental group. The experimental group receives the independent variable. After a certain amount of time, we then can compare them and then come up with a conclusion to our experiment. This is what we're going to be doing in class tomorrow. So come prepared because we got a great lab to do in designing your very first controlled experiment. See you then.